Good morning and welcome back to the Weekend Express. Time now to take a look at what's in the dailies this morning, and we'll be taking a look at the newspaper review with the High Court Advocate Ndegwa Njiru, as well as a political commentator Dismas Mukua. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us in the studio this morning.
Thank you.
I hope you're well.
We are well.
All right, so let's begin with the Standard on Saturday. On the front page, a shock as top academies face ban over exam scam. And so this is a surprising twist of events after the surprise announcement of KCPE results earlier this week. Let's begin with your thoughts, Ndegwa, on that surprise announcement, because everybody was taken by surprise there.
Thank you very much, Michelle. May I first of all congratulate the Minister, Matiang'i, for the bit that he has been able to achieve insofar as protecting the integrity of the exam is concerned. And we all got it in a very positive way when the announcement was made. By the way, it was even a surprise that none of us really knew that the results were being announced on that day.
Right.
But now we're having other shocking news that despite the enthusiasm and the positivity that we accepted the results with, today we are being told that there are top academies that face bans out of the exam scam.
Right.
And the question is, which exam then was stolen? Is it the same exam that Matiang'i has been telling us about? Or is it another exam? And then the question is, if we have this shocking news this morning, what is the credibility of the results that were read to us on Thursday? Do we still have the faith in what Matiang'i told us on that particular day, if all this is happening? And this is very shocking, and it shows how our institutions have degenerated to all these aspects of dishonesty. Remember, these institutions that we are talking about, these schools, are the ones that are generating the future leadership of this country. So we are teaching our children that you cannot succeed in life and that hard work does no longer pay. You have to cut shortcuts. You have to do shortcuts for you to succeed in life. And so Matiang'i must have a multi-sectoral approach of reforms in ensuring that we reform this society. Remember, Michelle, Matiang'i is not claiming this achievement out of the reforms that we have actually made and instilled in our people. But elections were not stolen because there was a gun in class. Elections were not stolen because we kept the exam papers in a safe room. Actually, they were being called containers, and any time that they were being opened, there was always a person who was there. That shows that the reforms is not integrated in us. If tomorrow the gun is withdrawn from that particular class, if tomorrow the container is withdrawn, then the integrity of the exam will still be where we were in 2015.
But wouldn't you say that the CS, Matiang'i, has done quite a bit, you know, with regard to gains in guarding exams?
That he has done. But now all what we are asking him to do now is to make sure that these reforms are inculcated in us. That people will not be failing to rig exams because there is a gun, but it's because of a duty and an obligation that the parents owes to their children, the school itself owes to its pupils, and the system owes to the nation. That the reforms will, the failure to steal exams will not be out of the instantaneous reforms that have taken place. He has to institutionalize this thing, and that brings me to where we were during the Meshoki rules. Remember, when Meshoki was alive, the Meshoki rules were alive. When he passed on, or when he left that particular ministry, today we no longer speak of Meshoki rules. Why? Because Minister Meshoki did not institutionalize that reform. It was personal. It was a reform as long as Meshoki is in that particular ministry. So today the question then is Matiang'i still sitting on that pedestal where Meshoki sat? And will these reforms that Matiang'i has brought survive his regime?
Right.
That's why we are saying he has to institutionalize these reforms. Yes.
Right, and let us focus, Dismas, on this scam that is being talked about in the first page, and that's a story that continues on page 4 of the paper. And so the allegations here is that at least 20 top private schools, the likes of Makini schools in Nairobi and Kisumu, Mount Kenya Academy, we have Liz Junior Academy in Naivasha. These schools are set for deregistration. That is what the Cabinet Secretary says, for registering or running multiple exam centers. So the scam here is that if one school has, say, 100 KCPE candidates, they divide them into groups of, say, 20, and then register those 20 candidates in 5 different institutions. So if all the candidates performed badly, the mean score, if the mean score was 100, then the school would have a low rating. But because the mean score was 20, the school had a better rating. So this is the scam we are talking about here. What are your thoughts on this?
Number one, Michelle, it's very surprising that actually Kenyans think Dr. Matiang'i has done a good job, because the principal responsibility of every public servant in Kenya is to go wake up in the morning, go to school and work. So for Dr. Matiang'i merely having done his job, I don't know why Kenya, for some reason, we are saying now, oh my God, this guy has done an amazing job. He has merely done what he's supposed to be doing. He has not gone the extra mile. He has not done anything which is very unique. And one wonders whether or not Dr. Matiang'i has now created systems within the Ministry of Education, so that in the unlikely event that next year is not the Minister for Education, we are not going back to the irregularities we've been witnessing in the past. And that's what Ndegwa has indicated, that when Mishuki was the minister in charge of transport, then there was sanity. But as soon as Mishuki left, we went back to insanity. And one hopes that Dr. Matiang'i is going to create systems so that it's not about the personality, so that you have a system and it doesn't matter who is going to sit in that office. Now, when you're coming back to the schools, you know, schools, the private schools in Kenya, their core business is not to offer academic programs. Those are business units. And they don't even look at, they don't have students, they don't have pupils. They have customers and they've got clients. And the only way you'll be able to attract many more clients or many more consumers is when you continuously achieve very high marks. So that's why these private schools go the extra mile to position themselves. And when they start creating those different streams, maybe dividing, if you've got a class of 100 students and then you divide them into 5 groups, if the ones who are considered to be on the lower side, when they fail, nobody bothers. Those private schools will not even talk about it. Because for them, the exams really is a marketing opportunity. And if you're running a private school and continuously keep on posting results which are not very impressive, shortly you are going to close your business and take a walk and go home. So that's something that Dr. Matiang'i needs to look at. But again, long term, or at the end of the day, what we need to do is invest so much resources in the public schools that not a single parent in Kenya has got an incentive to take a kid to a private school. Because the moment you start taking, the moment you invest a fortune in a private school, it means that you are diverting attention, you are diverting resources from the public sector and you're giving to the private schools. And one hopes that Dr. Matiang'i, as he tries to create this revolution, is going to ensure that public schools are top of the range, that they occupy a very serious position in society. And maybe at some stage we need to come up with regulations to ensure that parents in Kenya, especially the ones who work in the public sector, are not allowed to take their kids to private schools. Because right now the national government and the county governments have got no incentive to ensure that systems in the public sector works. And I'm very happy that there's a photo there of Dan Kazungu, whose kids attended a public school, and yesterday went for a Thanksgiving, showing that people have got faith in the public sector. Because they say that education creates opportunities for you. It cannot create opportunities for all Kenyans if resources are being diverted to the private sector.
Okay. And of course, these exams have been described as the most guarded exams in history. There's been a lot of praises for the Cabinet Secretary, Fred Matiang'i, for ensuring that they went as they did. There were only 21 cases of malpractices, and that is the lowest number of malpractices recorded so far. As we speak, of course, we're waiting for the results of the KCSE examinations, which last year had the highest number of irregularities. Let's talk about the gains, Ndegwa, that have been made in the Ministry of Education.
Yes. To me, I think Matiang'i, to some extent, is showing Kenyans that it is possible for us to reform our public sector, and that the only thing that we need is to have a willing heart that is going to drive these reforms. And I'll of course compare Matiang'i's achievement with other sectors when we come to that. And why we've been able to achieve this is because Matiang'i has been able to rally behind people who believes in his cause. And probably, let's say, for instance, take the NEC, which is the body that deals with the examination. He has been able to convince them that this process belongs to us. It is our duty to deliver to the Kenyans. That aspect of patriotism is what is required in driving these reforms. So to me, it has shown a bit that teamwork can actually achieve what we want to achieve if a person who is results and reform-oriented is driving the cause. And then the other thing I would want to say is that joining hard with what Mr. Dismas has said, we decommercialize our education sector. We remove capital from it, because why private schools are stealing and having these irregularities is because they want to have high top mark results. And that will be the reason why they are going to invite more clients. So if investment and heavy infrastructure can be done in our public schools, people will be able to have confidence and faith in that particular institution. That is why Matiang'i needs to move from now exams to real stuff. How good is our curriculum? Is it responding to the needs of the community at that particular time? Remember today, I was speaking to my son, and he was still telling me that they are still being told that Dr. Rullingcraft is the one who discovered Mount Kenya. Right. They are still being told that Christopher Columbus is the one who discovered America. How responsive is that information to our children? Does the discovery of America by Columbus respond to the social vices that we have in our society? Can that help my son to look at public resources as a beneficial to the whole society? If I am told that the Mount Kenya was discovered by Dr. Rullingcraft, does that respond, and does that answer the question why this primary school at my village in Karusha Primary School does not have video paints? Does that respond really? So the curriculum also needs to be worked on, and we have talked about this thing for a very long time. The curriculum reform has taken the same amount of time that we took when we were debating about the Constitution. It is a high time that Matiang'i comes and operationalizes these actual reforms. And I am saying, we do not need to see him flying next year's exam season to Kilifi to oversee the opening of the container. We do not want to see his PS waking up early in the morning, going to Kikuyu to oversee and to look at the opening of that container to see that it has not been tampered with. We do not even want to see guns in school. We want to inculcate that responsibility in the whole system, that the system will know that if we help the pupils have irregularity in school, the same will be exported into other sectors of government. So we need to inculcate that reform in him and in the society and in the community.
Right, yes. Right. Dismas, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the biggest challenge I think in Kenya is just creating systems that work. And unfortunately, since independence, we tend to rely on the goodwill of individuals. Like for instance, when Mishuki was around, traffic was working. Now Matiang'i is in education. Education seems to be working. What if Matiang'i goes to foreign affairs? Next year, we're going back to the same space. And I think we probably need to also emulate the Denmark system of education. Going back to what Ndegwa is talking about, that our system of education tends just to reward people for passing exams. They do not look at the kid right from nursery school and try and identify talent. You see so many Kenyans today who are either Form 4 graduates or even university graduates who cannot speak English, who cannot write in English, yet they've got those as superior grades. And I think we need to do a benchmarking on Denmark that is able to identify talent right from the word go, and everything is rewarded. If you are a good painter, your instructors right from class 1 are actually able to tell that this young man is going to be a good painter. And you know, they nurture that skill. And the most important, And I don't know why that's a contradiction in Kenya. The majority of our primary school teachers and even high school teachers did not take up teaching as number one in the priority list. Most of the teachers we have in primary schools went there because of academic challenges, so probably they didn't get very good grades to go to university. And even the teachers you have today in high school, majority of them would have not wanted to be teachers. They would have wanted to go to other professions. Now, what they've done in Denmark is to ensure that if you are a teacher, then you are highly regarded in society. And so many people compete to become teachers in Denmark. That if you're in a shopping mall and people identify you as a teacher, you get the kind of recognition or respect that we give to medical doctors in Kenya or a few MCAs who were stolen from our economy. And all the teachers in Denmark for primary and the equivalent of secondary school must have a master's degree in education. So at the bachelor's level, you can go study whatever you want to study. But if you want to become a teacher, then you are given a scholarship by the government, and then you are given special skills to ensure that your students or pupils get the best in society. So this idea for us of saying that you did not get good grades, then go become a primary school teacher, compromises our education system. If you speak to majority of Kenyans, the reason probably why they don't shine in life is those errors they say of the original entry. That your English teacher at class 1 did not get an A anywhere. So even your English teacher struggles with the grammar, sentence construction. And for you to undo these things later in life, it becomes a huge challenge.
Right, right. Very valid points that are being raised. Let's cross over to politics a bit. And this is from the front page of the Standard. CORD skips investors forum over an Uhuru Ruto link. So the opposition this week snapped a meeting for political parties with investors, saying that the investors are pushing the Jubilee agenda. This has received a lot of criticism from not just the organizers, but the Jubilee members as well, with many of them saying CORD leaders should have attended the forum and then use that platform to air out their grievances. Ndegwa, do you agree with that?
To me, looking at it from a perspective where KEPSA is trying to drive an agenda of fear, and I believe the opposition was justified in skipping the forum, because if you look at the agenda of the summit was to ensure that there is peaceful elections. KEPSA is not concerned about the credibility of the elections, is not concerned about the integrity of the election process, and it is because of the lack of credibility and lack of integrity in the process that brings issues of breach of peace.
Right.
So to me, inviting people to talk about peace is getting us back to where KANU had brought us during the time of 20 years of Moi era. The Nyayo philosophy of peace, love, and unity. You know, that philosophy of peace, love, and unity is a good philosophy, but it's a philosophy that is geared towards driving a particular agenda, that you must have this person in power for you to have peace. I was discussing with the Dismas and we mentioned something, a country called Rwanda. In Rwanda, they always have peaceful elections, but are elections credible?
Right.
Do they have the integrity that is required? So this, KEPSA is driving that agenda and the Moi philosophy of peace, love, and unity. So it's a philosophy that is driven by the despotic and tyranny leadership. And when CORD says and attributes KEPSA to Jubilee, to me, again, I come and say they are CMS twins.
Right.
You may not be able to separate them. Because for them, KEPSA is so mindful about the profit they will earn out of their businesses because there is peace, more than the process that will bring out and achieve that peace that is intended. So to me, they need to up their game. And this debate KEPSA is bringing up needs to be owned by the Kenyans. They ought to invest much more on ensuring the credibility of the elections. Remember, KEPSA, other than doing these summits, they never do any other thing. And the summits they're doing it in Mombasa. It's no different from the summits that are taking place in State House.
Right.
It would be better if the debate that KEPSA is trying to bring up is owned by the Kenyans. I want them to sponsor, I want to see them sponsoring a summit in Kibera. I want to see them sponsoring a summit in Kayole. I want to see them sponsoring a summit in Kirinyaga and Mau Summit and anywhere else where we have this breach of peace. Remember, the guys KEPSA is inviting are the ones that are stalking and investing in violence. It is not the Kenyans who invite themselves to violence. They are invited by the political players. The political players are the ones who tell the Mwananchi and Wanjiko that your votes have been stolen, you must guard your votes this way, and to guard your votes, you must resort into violence. So they are actually investing in the people who cause violence.
Right.
The persons who are actually invited into these summits, Michelle, are the ones who stoke and invest in violence. But who react in this violence? The persons who react are the Mwananchi. So they should have a well-elaborate scheme and probably civic education that is geared towards protecting the integrity and the credibility of the elections.
Okay.
They should be asking the IBC, have you guys prepared yourselves for the elections?
Okay. Those are interesting, very interesting concerns being brought up by Ndengwa. But Dismas, there's been, yes, of course, the focus right now is having credible elections. But there's still been a lot of calls for peaceful elections come 2017. And now we have stakeholders like KEPSA coming out to hold these, meetings for peaceful elections. They have invited stakeholders from across the political divide. Would it be right for us to politicize this matter and say that they're pushing the Jubilee agenda?
Michelle, if you're suffering from malaria and you go to a medical doctor and they confirm that you've got those plasmodium cells which cause malaria, you'll be given antimalarials. You're not going to be given Ino or Indoseed or Panadol. The only reason why countries all over the world go to violence after elections is as a result of having elections which are not considered to be credible by all the players. And all dictatorships in the world have got very peaceful elections because the autocratic leaders have got a stronghold over the society. Like, for instance, the case of Rwanda. There's no way you're going to have violence in Rwanda because President Kagame controls everything. That's the reason why even the voter turnout is as high as 99%. And for KEPSA to make sense in our society today, they should come up with a summit like that which addresses two issues. That all the processes are supposed to be predictable and the outcome unpredictable. In Kenya today, if you keep on telling us that you're meeting with the stakeholders, you want to be sure that the elections end up being peaceful,
right.
That's when you have malaria and you're being given a Panadol, hoping that a Panadol is going to kill malaria. The only way we are going to have peaceful elections is by, number one, ensuring that the elections are credible. A peaceful election is actually a byproduct of a credible election. If the processes are predictable, Raila Odinga, Kenyatta, Wetangula, Musalia Mudavadi go to the election, and it's very clear who has won the election, nobody will go to the streets in violence. But if the process is unpredictable and then somebody is declared a winner, then people will say, no way, our votes have been stolen. Then you go out and engage in this man of mischief. Right. And it's very clear. When you look at the membership of KEPSA, all those businessmen, they are the principal business partners of the government. So for them, they do business with the government of the day. They don't care whether it's called, they don't care whether it's Amani, they don't care whether it's Jubilee. For them, their reason of existence is to do business with the government of the day. If you notice KEPSA, wherever there's a national issue that requires a bipartisan approach, they never come out. They go take back seats. When the cost is very clear, that's when they make an attempt to come out to offer a solution. And in Kenya, there is something called incest. Majority of the people who run those organizations that are founder members of KEPSA, right. Who actually owns them? They're owned by the key players in the Jubilee administration today. Like, for instance, Brookside is a key player in KEPSA. Who owns Brookside? Commercial Bank of Africa is a key player in KEPSA. Who owns the Commercial Bank of Africa? So the opposition court has got a very valid reason to say that we are not going to participate in this kind of summit merely to endorse some issues that you've already discussed with your business partners and agreed upon. And I think anybody who loves Kenya today, whether you're in the business sector, whether you're in civil society, let's work on having two things. That we've got a predictable electoral process, and it's only the outcome which is unpredictable. Right. Because right now, when you go to, for some of the MPs who attended the KEPSA summit, they were just given issues and everybody was rubber stamping ideas. So that at the end of the day, then people can blame CORD for mischief. But again, what I found to be interesting is that Mr. Raila Odinga is blamed either for acts of omission or commission. Adi attended the rally there and caused a stampede. The Minister for Internal Security and the rest of the guys would have said that Mr. Raila Odinga is probably not behaving with respect. He should have respected us. He doesn't have a formal constitutional office, and he wants to be the last person to speak. When he decides to go to Nyamira and have a kikao with some funny youth, again, he's told that you did a mistake by giving the meeting a wide berth. So really one wonders, what role is Raila Odinga supposed to play in society? And what role is Jubilee supposed to play in society? Or whether or not we actually need this kind of summits? Because even when you wait to see what is going to come out of KEPSA, it's not going to be anything that is earth-shocking. And if KEPSA was really interested in the well-being of Kenya, they should just address corruption within the electoral process. The rest of the things will fall into place.
Right.
Look at it this way, Michelle, before we wind up that topic. KEPSA is investing on MPs to deliver, or maybe CORD and Jubilee to deliver peace, peaceful elections. One of the person who is actually spiking and igniting fires in this country are members of parliament. The other day I saw something that was going on social media about Moses Kuria. He was actually speaking spite and very bad comments about the CORD leadership. And behind him were serious guys behind him. I wouldn't mention names. And he was even saying that wakati Kaina alitoka sijui alikwenda Bondo. I think you heard that in the media. And KEPSA is dining and whining with such kind of people who are speaking venom. When somebody who believes in the CORD leadership sees Moses Kuria speak the way he speaks, and KEPSA has not called upon the institutions that should take charge, like the DPP and the police sector, to make sure that such kind of people speaking venom are taken care of. And these are people you're inviting into a hotel in Mombasa to discuss about credibility of the peaceful of the elections process. And they are the ones who are investing in violence. Look at what is happening in the Jubilee sector. The Jubilee has told its people, we will win this election by 70%. They have not prepared their people that there can even be a possible loss of elections. CORD is investing in making sure that their people are not going to accept any other result other than the result of a win. So we are actually investing in violence. Any day that goes is an investment in violence. Look at the state of the IBC today. We do not know whether we have an IBC or we do not have an IBC. Remember, there's already a vote that was done in Parliament through an act of Parliament that has shown that there is no credibility with this current IBC. These IBC commissioners who are still in office are the ones who are now still pushing this agenda for elections. They are giving timelines, they are giving the processes, they are procuring services. But people say we do not have credibility, we don't have faith in this institution. Right. Look at the panel that has now been brought together to put up another IBC. They are already not able to come up with the chairmanship of that particular institution. If you look at what brought us to where we were in 2007, we did a hasty election reform of the Electoral Commission. We did a very hasty one, which was started by the IPPG in 1997. We said we cannot go into elections with this particular institution. And so we never gave time for that particular institution to organize itself. Today we have said we are going to kick out the whole of the IBC, even without remembering that we need to have some guys with institutional memory remaining behind to ensure that they usher in the new Electoral Commission coming in. If you remember the transition that we had from the interim independent Electoral Commission to the Electoral Commission that we now have, the independent Electoral Commission that we have now, there was a transitional clause in the act that said that we shall make sure that we have institutional memory remaining behind to usher in the new independent Electoral Boundary Commission. And that is why people like Isaac Hassan and the commissioners that were there, like Hassan Zibo, were able to be saved from the interim independent Electoral Commission to the independent Electoral Commission. There was that institutional memory that Kenyans believed that needs to be retained. Today we have said we are kicking out every person in a wholesome condemnation. And I'm not saying that what God pushed, the agenda that pushed was wrong, but that's another epitome of chaos, because the guys we are bringing in office have nothing to do with institutional memory. Yes.
And I like that you brought that up, because I'd like us to take a look at this Saturday Nation and take a look at page 7 of the paper. IEBC will look to enlist new voters in January, and it has a target of more than 6.7 million unregistered voters. This will be the second phase of the mass voter registration exercise. But last week was the commencement of interviews for the position of commissioner of IEBC. 36 candidates were shortlisted for that position. But I want to get your take on this, Dismas. Among those 36 candidates are 5 candidates who had previously applied for the position of chairman of IEBC. The same candidates that the select panel said, those allegations of, issues of integrity against them. So what do you feel, what is your take on the fact that they still will be interviewed for the position of commissioner?
Well, when you look at that panel, one wonders whether they benefit from any expert help on how to recruit, on how to end that for serious staff. And for me, I think they are very casual and careless in their approach to a very serious national assignment. They know for a fact that in Kenya, elections is about life and death. People die during election, and probably others are born. So it's a very serious issue that you need to give necessary weight. But they do a short list, then they make the names public. And then a few minutes later, they say, wait a minute, we are not going to carry on these interviews because of integrity issues. So then you're beginning to wonder, what was the basis of doing a shortlisting? And any rational human being would have imagined that before you do a shortlisting, you speak with the relevant agencies. If it's the Credit Reference Bureau, if it's the Anti-Corruption Commission, if it's help everybody else, you use the information you get from those organizations before you come up with a shortlist. And one would have expected that when you say these are shortlisted members, then they've gone through all the hurdles, all the challenges, and they're ready to go. So when Musuni makes an announcement that we are going to re-advertise and get new persons because we got information from the Anti-Corruption Commission, then you begin to wonder, is there somebody at the Anti-Corruption Commission who is controlling this recruitment process? Because one would have assumed that before you do the shortlisting, the Anti-Corruption Commission should have cleared these people. And if I were one of those people who had been shortlisted to be the chair of the IBC, I would be taking this selection panel to court today, because now they've really dragged their reputation through the mud. But when you go back to the processes, you recall Adan Duale saying that the selection for the chairman has not been very transparent and it does not meet the expectations. And Sakaja said the same thing. So again, if you want to join the dots, it seems to me that Jubilee is very clear and very keen to have one of their own being the chairman of IBC. And you see, the chairman of IBC is not an ordinary commissioner. The chairman of IBC is actually the returning officer for the election of the presidency. So for me, when you look at the political dynamics, when you look at the body language of Sakaja and Duale, I suspect they want somebody who's going to be the returning officer for the elections for the presidency, somebody that they can actually manipulate. And for them, as far as they're concerned, all the names which had been shortlisted were probably not ideal for them. Then they decided to throw a spanner into the works. Now, having been blacklisted for the position of a chairman, again, I do not understand why you would want to interview these people now for the position of, for a normal commissioner. That is a logic which is upside down. And that's the reason why we've been saying all along that what we need to do in Kenya is to create systems that work, that do not depend on individuals. And that's what I said about IBC. One hopes that the outgoing commissioners have actually set up or left very strong systems that will work. I mean, if you are going to assume that we need very strong institutional memory, at some stage, the institutional memory we are talking about could be some memory that we do not need, because their credibility was down in the waters. They were accused of stealing elections. Yes. So probably just as good, they go with that bad institutional memory. So we are left with a clean slate. But I think fundamentally, the most important thing is to have those systems that it doesn't matter who is running the show. And I think for these panelists, for the new team at IBC, they're very reckless. These are very serious national assignments that they are joking around with. And I've got a number of friends who've applied for those positions. And you'll be surprised to know that the selection panel does not have the basic courtesy to send those people who've been shortlisted They have not sent them an email address. They have not even given them a phone call. So these people who are being invited for interviews are just seeing this information in the newspapers or seeing their names on TV, hearing their names on radio. So you begin to wonder, when you are carrying out a serious national assignment, doesn't basic manners demand that you call all the successful applicants, you tell them that you're going to be invited for this interview, and your name is coming out in the newspaper tomorrow or in the next week? We talk about digital government today. What is so hard about sending these people email? Even if it's the same email, you shoot it out and you tell these guys, you've been selected for these interviews, your names will be in the newspaper tomorrow.
Right.
So most guys were surprised. They're having their drinks or they're having dinner at home, and then they see their names in the newspaper. Then one wonders, if this panel cannot get right basic manners, how are they going to give us very solid people to run this election?
And I like that you bring that up, Dismas, because Ndegwa, there's been a lot of criticism on this selection panel, that it's not strong enough, that it's not doing the right job. Dismas says it's rather reckless. What are your thoughts?
My thinking is as good as that of Dismas, and as my bet is as good as that of other Kenyans, that we are joking with a very, very, very sensitive and very delicate issue. Kenya was where it was in 2007 because of failure to have confidence with the Electoral Commission.
Right.
And the commission is the face of the system. If we have a good commission, the good commission will be able to put in place a good system that will be able to deliver the credibility and the integrity, the transparency and the accountability of the whole of the election process. So this panel that was put together by Parliament is a panel that is preparing this country for chaos and problems. Because the credibility and with all due respect of the members of this panel, they do not seem to understand their brief. That their brief is that of coming up with a commission that will usher this country to a new era and a new regime, a constitutional era of a new electoral process. So when we see them joking around with such kind of a process, and when we see them that they have not even given us a commission to date, despite the timelines that were put in the amended act, and then we see that there is a projection, the IBC is going to put in place 6.7 new voters. Notwithstanding that the previous mass registration never yielded the intended target. And also considering that in the country, there is a lot of voters' apathy, and especially from where I come from, the region where I come from, Mount Kenya region, there's a lot of voters' apathy, and that is true because of the dissatisfaction of the members, and which probably may come to that process later. How are we going to yield the 6.7 voters? Remember, there are proposals that even the diasporas are going to vote. To me, when you start inviting the diasporas to vote and you do not even have the systems in place, that's another epitome of chaos. Nobody will ever believe the vote that came from the diaspora. Remember, it is the right of every Kenyan to know how many diasporas are going to participate in these elections. By now, we should be knowing that in diaspora, the so-called diaspora, we have 1 million voters. We have 1 million diasporas, or 20 million diasporas. Out of the 20 million diasporas, 10 of them are registered, are credible, are entitled to vote, or have reached the maturity voting. We need to be told, out of the 10 million diasporas, for instance, how many of them are credible to vote, even before you go to register them. We already know. We already need to be knowing how many of them are going are eligible for voting. So this diaspora votes will be the epitome of dispute, like what we had with the spoiled votes. How many? Remember, when we went to the Supreme Court, there was a fundamental question whether or not a spoiled vote is a vote that has been cast, and whether, when coming up with the total percentage of the votes of 50 plus 1%, whether we also need to reconsider the spoiled votes. So these diasporas, how many are they? How many are we targeting? Are they going to be the reason why Kenyans may dispute the results? Could they also be a reason why probably they are being placed for rigging of the elections? We also need to be very much wary. There was one judge in the English courts who used to say, be wary of Greek bearing gifts. They could be having Trojan horses.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Very interesting sentiments there. And very quickly now, I'd like us to take a look at the Weekend Star. And on the front page, Gideon Moi to be deputy president in the NASA lineup. And that's a story that continues on page 4 and 5 of the Weekend Star. So the National Super Alliance, the proposed Super Alliance, is now crafting a team. It is proposing 2 deputy presidents. And actually, let's take a look at this structure, if we could have just pictures of it up. And so this team seeks to now create a first and second deputy president, a prime minister, and 2 deputy prime ministers, all in the face of representing all Kenyans in the Super Alliance. Let's begin with you, Dismas. Gideon Moi, probably to be deputy president should NASA win the general election. They say the presidential candidate will be known by April next year. What do you think on this structure?
2 things come to mind. When you're coming up with any coalition, priority is supposed to be on the citizens. But as we have this conversation, it seems to me now the priority is on our political leaders. They're saying we are going to hunt, and before they even plunge into the forest and get the gazelle, they already want to start apportioning the various body parts. That I'm going to have this, I'm going to take the head, I'm going to take the legs, and I'm going to do this,
right,
which really is unacceptable. But again, not surprising in the context of politics in today, because all the guys we elect to the positions of authority or power, they never really go to serve Wanjiku. They go there and use power as a special purpose vehicle or as a factor of production. But going back to the founding principle for NASA, and I've heard Michele Ngele say times above number, that NASA really is not all about political parties. Political parties form a small component, maybe 10%, that they want to incorporate the trade union, they want to incorporate teachers, the religious community, even the private sector that they gave a wide berth in Mombasa, that they want all these people incorporated so that we can have a better Kenya. And in the event that they agree on Michele Ngele to be the flag bearer and Gideon Moi as the deputy president, and if they concretize that in iron and they bring out that message in the public domain, I think the elections for 2017 will be so complicated for President Kenyatta and his deputy. And you recall during the last election, President Kenyatta and his deputy won, not because they appealed to the nation that I'm going to work on your bank balance, that I'm going to create opportunities for all of you. It's the fear of ICC which made President Kenyatta and his deputy win the election. And they went back to their villages and said to people that the only reason why we are being persecuted is simply because we fought for your rights. When we were being given a beating, I stood up and I protected you. So on that basis, there was that very emotional connection. But as Ndegwa has indicated, right now as we speak, there's a lot of voter apathy, or what in the US they call voter suppression. Because majority of the voters, people who took President Kenyatta and his deputy into office, are beginning to ask themselves whether or not they are part of family and friends. And this, boils down to corruption. They're beginning to realize that if you come from Gatundu, you're not going to buy a kilo of sugar for 50 bob because you voted for Kenyatta. And somebody who voted for Raila in Bondo is going to buy it for 300 shillings. And when all these stories of corruption come out about family and friends, it's going to create a voter suppression in especially central Kenya and parts of Rift Valley, where Ruto has got a lot of power. And that worked for the NASA leadership structure as they've proposed. Because when you mention Moses Musalia Mudavadi, or rather Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, it does not make anybody nervous. If you mention Raila Odinga in a bar where his village mates are having a drink, they'll probably pay up their bills and disappear in a rush. There is that Raila phobia in central Kenya. You would even recall last week the president spent about 4 days castigating Raila Odinga, saying that the economy is going to take a plunge because of Raila Odinga. And he was really trying to create that Raila phobia. And Musalia Mudavadi doesn't have that kind of a phobia. And when you see this kind of thing coming up, one wishes that the NASA architects would actually have Wanjiku's interest right at the priority. Because the question people are beginning to ask, when Kenyatta took office about 4 years ago, and today, are you really better off? And I think that would be the underlying message. And if you're coming as NASA, how can you convince the nation that you are going to be any different from Kenyatta? Because again, when we see you today saying that you want to create several positions for the deputy president's, prime minister's position, then people begin to ask, is there really a difference between these two groups? And if NASA is able to come out and differentiate itself from Jubilee, then we'll probably have a very good election next year. But really, the buck stops now within us. It stops with Musalia Mudavadi to inspire the nation. And with his experience in managing public finances, he can actually tell us that for me, all I'm going to do is just create economic opportunities for you. Because Ndegwa here has not become a millionaire because he knows President Kenyatta.
And of course, I'm not.
It's because of his sweat that he's able to do these things. However, the friends and family of, say, President Kenyatta or the deputy president, according to parliamentary hearings, who've become millionaires during this administration. And maybe as a nation, maybe we should even say that the election next year should be a referendum on corruption. We ask ourselves, when you look at NASA, what is your track record on fighting corruption? When you look at Jubilee, what is your track record in fighting corruption? So that people vote on the basis of corruption. And you would recall that the so-called Jubilee bloggers on social media, they've come up with this funny fallacy that an incumbent in Africa never loses the presidency. But yesterday you saw what has happened in the Gambia. In as much as they've got the entire nation is probably the size of Nairobi in terms of people who vote. But a president has been beaten with an incumbent, and good luck Jonathan suffered the same fate. So it's important for really as Kenyans to ask ourselves that for how long are we going to entertain these family and friends at the cost of national prosperity? And shouldn't we come up with a new system to vet our leaders using Chapter 6? Because when you go to the village and there's a pre-wedding, there are so many people who would not be given the opportunity to become the treasurer. They'll not even be allowed to keep 10 shillings, or even when you're planning for a funeral. But those people that you cannot allow to keep money for your pre-wedding or for a funeral, you go ahead and elect them to become MCAs, or you elect them to become your MPs to be in charge of CDF. We should now become shareholders in this body called Kenya, and all of us appreciate that these guys we are employing, when they steal, they're actually stealing your resources. Because right now, when people talk about taxpayers' money, it's something which is very obscure, abstract, that a normal Wanjiko doesn't know what is taxpayer resource. So maybe next year we should make our elections a referendum on corruption.
All right. And time is not on our side. Let's hear very quickly from Ndegwa this prospect of a cohesive and single-minded opposition. Should it be a cause for worry for the Jubilee administration?
I think it should be a cause for worry, and of course it is, because if you have seen the kind of the strategy the Jubilee government is taking, they have taken that strategy of trying to bash the opposition and to demonize them. That you guys cannot speak about corruption. You're not as good as you purport to be. You're as corrupt as we are. So, and you can see even the president himself has invested a lot of time and resources in trying to have that bashing of the opposition, and trying to have his people like Ishungwa bringing up and connecting people with like Junet with the whole issue of the NYS. And of course, they're trying to do that so that they can try to absorb the heat that is in the society, and ensure that they have portrayed a picture that even these guys who are telling you that they are crusaders for the corruption, they are as bad as we are people. So there is a lot of worries within the Jubilee. And now the matrix will even be much more complex if this NASA proposed structure kicks in and becomes a reality. Because what will happen is that Gideon Moi will take half of what William Ruto brags of today, that he can have the Rift Valley with him. Remember, there's a lot of dissenting voices in Rift Valley. And the dissenting voices are now being shown, being led by people like Isaac Ruto, people like Gideon Moi. So at the end of the day, Deputy President William Ruto will not have the solid block of the Rift Valley as he had when he went 2013. The only person who is going to deliver, and he has a lot of difficulties as well because of the voters' apathy, is President Kenyatta. President Kenyatta can be assured that nobody might penetrate his voting bloc. But unfortunately, the politicians may not be able to penetrate to the voting bloc, but the voice of reason has penetrated. And that voice of reason is what Kenyatta cannot be able to deal with today. Because the voters are saying, wewe unapeleka sukari Western, we are taking all these things to other places because you want to owe them. For us, we have been backing you for the last, I don't know how many years. Even when you were in Kanu 2002, we backed you up, but we have nothing to show. So that voice of reason is what he cannot break up in our hearts. And that is what gives him a challenge when you come to the issues of the new NASA arrangement. It gives him some bit of stomach ulcers. And the other proposal is the second proposal of the Prime Minister's structure. The Prime Minister's structure has created another epitome of ulcers for William Ruto and President Kenyatta. Why? Because this other proposal, where we have the Prime Minister, is trying to incorporate the small communities. Remember, the Jubilee never speaks about the small communities. If you have looked at how Deputy President William Ruto is doing, he's either going to Coast, Western, or Kisii. Have you seen him going to where the Ogiek are? Have you seen him going to where that other small community where they have, or going to the Makondes, where the Makondes are, is actually the Makondes who came to where William Ruto is. Right. He never went there. So the Makonde might be represented in this structure of the proposed having deputy prime minister and these are other deputy presidents. But the question and the challenge that CORD will have is that this structure is not appreciated in our new constitution. How are they then going to bring it up in the new constitution?
To require constitutional amendments.
It will require constitutional amendments. That's the only challenge that they may have. But what the small communities will say, let's first of all appreciate and take this structure. It is actually promising something for us. There is something in store for us, and it is better for us to go with this and cross the bridge as we arrive it.
Right.
Remember, Jubilee is not about any other community. Jubilee is Kikuyu, and Jubilee is Kalenjin. These other communities have not been incorporated.
Remember, they've had this, the new Jubilee Party, you know, the new parties, they say this will represent the face of Kenya.
It's a fallacy. It's a fallacy for reason that, have you seen Jubilee, have you seen William Ruto leading a campaign in Kibera? Why has he not gone to sell Jubilee in Kibera? In Kibera, we have about 1 million voters. And in these small sectors, we have one small voters. Have you seen him leading this campaign in Kodele? So it's a fallacy that we are all included in this. And it's a high time the Kenyans realize that we will not have the Yaya James in this country and they will not deliver the agenda that we want. We better go the Gambia way.
Right, yes. Right, and take them out of power. Okay, absolutely. Thank you very much, Ndegwa Njiru and Dismas Mokua there, taking us through what's in the dailies this morning. Many thanks for watching. Your feedback on our social media pages also greatly appreciated. Do keep the conversation going. And that brings us to a close here on the Weekend Express. My name is Michele Ngele. Good morning.